Let's go ahead and bring in Lindsey Walenga with us on the Oakland County MegaCast. She is the CEO for Siren PR. Thanks for being with us today.
Hi, Ronnie. Thank you for having me. Hi, Tyler.
So, what advice are you giving to some of your clients right now when it comes to communication in the middle of a crisis?
Yeah, man, a lot of advice. So when the pandemic started earlier this year, we did a lot of crisis communication support for our clients around, how do you communicate these big decisions that you're making? And sometimes these decisions that are happening hour by hour by hour. So overall, the big point that we are always trying to make with our clients, the big piece of advice that we're always giving them is to communicate clearly during this time. There's so much confusion out there, so much uncertainty, that the best thing you can really do to build relationships with anyone right now, but especially your customers and your audiences, is to communicate clearly.
Yeah, and one thing is like maybe you make a decision and then you go public with that decision, but you have to change that decision. So when it comes to that, it can seem like there's misinformation that's being put out when in fact you're just changing because the information is changing and the situation is changing. How can they clearly communicate when they're making those changes?
So that's a really good question. And one of the best things that you can do to be able to communicate clearly when times get as crazy as they are right now is to have communication channels that are well taken care of. So if you have social media channels that are running smoothly during normal times, if you have an email marketing system that has a healthy list that you're reaching all the people that you need to through it, if you have a website that is healthy and well taken care of, and if you're, a larger or consumer organization, if you have relationships with reporters. So if you have these communication channels that are well taken care of, then when you need to get information out, you can go straight to delivery and not have to fight fires or worry about, broken systems along the way. So that's one really important thing, is to make sure that your communication channels are running smoothly in normal times so that when you need them, they can show up for you.
Lindsey Walenga with us here on the Oakland County MegaCast. She's the CEO for Siren PR over in our fine city of Royal Oak. Always great having you here on the show with us. Social media has been the lifeline for so many companies. And in some ways, this is a good time for us to be going through a pandemic because of the technology we have. How vital has social media been for a lot of your clients?
Crucial, really, because it's a direct to consumer or a direct to audience communication channel. You don't have to buy advertising space. You don't have to, issue a press release and go through reporters to get your information to the people that need it. If you have your social media following built up to encompass all of your clients and the people that, the kind of people that you want to work with, your community members, you'll be able to get your information across quickly and clearly. So it has been really important for our clients and a lot of small businesses. We worked with the Royal Oak Downtown Development Authority, and they've been doing a lot of work in communicating with small businesses during this crisis. And social media has been a pivotal communication channel for effectiveness that way.
Yeah, and Lindsey, not just the clients that you're working with, but from your standpoint and your company there as well, you're a boutique PR company. How have you had to switch and change how you're operating there with your team?
So that's a good question. Thank you for asking. So we actually just went through a rebrand that we launched this week. Our name has been Siren PR for 8 years. And over the last year or so, we have decided to really level up in the way that we're positioning ourselves, because what we've done since 2012 has really been so much more than public relations. I think people think about PR synonymous to the media, but as you just discussed with social media and with really getting information across to the people that need it, it's about communication, not just public relations. So in the rebrand that we just went through this week, social media was a core component of that, and letting people know why we dropped the PR from our name, what that means, and why it's important.
Lindsey Walenga with us. She is the CEO of Siren, joining us on the Oakland County MegaCast today. Lindsey, for those businesses or those nonprofits, or really anybody that is currently starting their social media outreach during the pandemic, what advice have you been giving to them, and what trends are you seeing among these companies that are working well as they're really starting to ramp up those operations now with the pandemic bringing that necessity?
When you are forced to close your doors, it's a really good time to reflect and think about the kind of stories that you want to tell. Business owners, especially small business owners, restaurant owners, they might not always feel like they have the time to do social media well, or to promote themselves and project their brand image well. But when business slows down and you're forced to do that, you might feel like you have more space to do what the best business leaders out there prioritize regularly, which is reflect on your brand message. So the first thing that you can do to have really strong communication channels, whether that's social media or your website or whatever it is to know your brand narrative, know your message, and know your audience and what they need from you, so that you can tell the stories that resonate with them. So I would encourage small business owners in Oakland County, nonprofit leaders, really anyone trying to lead an organization right now, to use this time to reflect on the message that you want to convey and what your audiences need from you.
And while we're talking about social media, it can be a great way to get positive news and your message out to the community. But unfortunately, sometimes it can also be a detriment, especially if you leave it open to comments from individuals. What advice or what do you suggest for people or businesses or nonprofits that maybe have negative reviews or negative comments on their social media in a way that makes them look like they're being open and transparent and not just shutting down negative responses from people?
Yeah. So negative comments on social media is something that brings a lot of business owners or organizational leaders stress, for sure. It feels risky to be out there communicating that way, but that's the way your people are communicating. So if your people are on Facebook or Instagram, then that's where you need to be. And how to mitigate the risk with that is to communicate clearly, communicate early, so that you are the one that tells your story. And then when you see comments start to come in, don't get into a negative back and forth with people on social media. As the brand, you want to rise above kind of the rumor mill that you might see spinning on social media in the comment sections, and comment publicly on the conversation maybe once, and then take it to private message if there are conflicts that need to be resolved. Don't ever resolve a conflict with a specific follower publicly. You want to do that privately, but make sure that you address any big concerns, like with an umbrella statement in the comment section.
I will say, for me, social media has helped me be able to reach companies directly. Like maybe if you had an issue or you had a complaint, you go through the 1-800 number or the customer service and nothing happens. But if you tweet them and tag them, I've been pretty successful, and I know other people that I worked with, former reporters, did the same thing. Especially if you have a larger number of followers, then it can help resolve the issues as well. But of course, one of the things you want to do is make sure you follow up with a positive retweet saying, hey, thank you for addressing my concern. But from a consumer standpoint, social media can really be a great avenue for you to be able to get a problem addressed.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And, a function of that, or what makes that possible, is if a company has a well-organized and responsive marketing and communication team, and which is the mark of a well-organized company. So if you're hitting roadblocks with customer service and you use social media to voice your concerns and you get a response quickly, that actually is testament to the quality of that company, because that means that they have their marketing department, their communication department running well. And I would say, it's not necessarily on the consumer to say this was resolved well. That's a beautiful gift that you can give a company. But the company should be able to just, know that this is a way that we have to communicate with and respond to our consumers. So yeah, it's definitely a benefit to consumers these days.
Do you still have some of the small companies or small nonprofits that maybe don't understand the power of social media? Because I come across, especially like a newer company, and if they don't have a Facebook page or an Instagram page, which is all free, then I question the legitimacy of that company.
Oh, yeah, that's a really good point. So if a business doesn't have a Facebook page, are they credible and legitimate? Definitely having well taken care of, current, relevant website and social media channels are fundamental to building credibility for your company, knowing your message, conveying it clearly over those channels. I would say, though, that it's not necessarily the small businesses that I see that don't understand that. I think that people starting and running businesses these days, I generally see that they do understand the power of social media. They just might need our help in figuring out how to do it. Where I see a little bit more resistance is in the larger, older organizations who might have one or two innovative leaders at the top, but are meeting resistance on, changing the way that they're investing their marketing or advertising dollars more toward the digital side, because it's a change from what they've done for decades past.
Yeah, I used to be the public information officer for the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives here in the state of Michigan. And there's nothing about having pretty much almost no one in there in leadership even knew what social media was. Like, they didn't understand. And we could only have Twitter. We couldn't even have the other platforms because it was a DOJ mandate. And it was like, it's Twitter. You don't, Twitter someone, you tweet someone. I mean, it was comical almost. But they didn't really understand. You have so many people that can be in these leadership positions who do not understand or grasp the power of social media, and not just in a negative way, but also the positive way into which you can utilize that social media to help reach the community.
It really is. Social media and all the other communication channels are really important to be able to do well as an organization, no matter what kind of organization you have. These are modes of communicating. And, our decisions and our product offerings and our services are really only as good as our effectiveness in communicating about them. It's okay if leaders don't understand all of the potential there, but hopefully they would have someone like you on their team who they're willing to listen to and take advice from. I think that's the mark of a good leader, is being able to surround yourself with people that know more than you.
So Lindsey, knowing that, and knowing right now so many companies are still trying to navigate this crisis that COVID-19 has become, and 7 months into it, if businesses are struggling with their bottom line, when should they know to invest some of that money into hiring a firm such as yours to help them with their communications?
It's different for every business. It's really, I wouldn't venture to say how much and at what exact point you should choose to invest your hard-earned money, except to say that there's never a wrong time to prioritize communicating well with your audiences. So every business has a unique situation, but we have had several clients this year who have chosen to prioritize tightening up their brand message and communicating more effectively through a partnership with us, while they were forced to, reflect and take some downtime during kind of the height of these peaks. It is a good time when you are not running all over the world, trying to serve your clients everywhere, to prioritize your own communication channels and brand.
So knowing that social media has definitely changed and the platforms continue to change, what if someone is somewhat new, or maybe they had a Facebook and they don't update it, now they're saying, okay, I need to get back into this game because this pandemic is going to continue, so let me refocus my energy on communications. What advice do you have for some of these businesses on trying to understand the difference between the various social media platforms and which one and how they should utilize them?
So to figure out which social media channels or platforms you should be on, the most important thing to ask yourself is, who is my audience? And that's the most important thing to ask yourself first when you're communicating anything in any situation, whether that's interpersonal or business. Who is my audience? Who am I trying to connect with? And then where are they? So, there's a lot of research out there on the good old Google machine about which platforms, veer more toward millennials or baby boomers. You can find that information out with some, light searching, but you have to think about who your audience is and where they are. And then that is where you should put your efforts. I would say stay away from trying to do all of it and focus your efforts, especially in these uncertain times, on communicating clearly with the most important people for your brand.
So TikTok is not the same as Facebook. So what you do for TikTok, don't do for Facebook, and Instagram is different than Twitter. That's what we tried to share with everyone. Lindsey Walenga with us here on the Oakland County MegaCast. She is the CEO of Siren, a strategic communication firm here in the Metro Detroit area. And Lindsey, before we let you go here on the Oakland County MegaCast, anything we didn't touch on that you want to share with our listeners and our viewers?
Thank you. Yes, I would say that the most important thing that you can do to strengthen relationships with your customers, your clients, your team, all of your stakeholders right now during this really wild, unpredictable, and stressful time is to communicate clearly with them. In team meetings, when you're announcing big news, when you are sharing stories of how you're getting through the pandemic over social media, when you're letting people know about decisions you've made related to your business. Communicate clearly. And in order to do that, do it early, do it often, and be transparent. When you give people the facts, most of the time they rise to the occasion.
Great advice for all of us to listen to, whether or not we're business owners or not. People should remember that as an individual, you really have a brand as well. So take that advice to heart. Lindsey, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.